right, if we can please call this meeting of the West Dallas West Milwaukee School District to order, please. And please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mr. Keller, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Suzette, could we do the roll call, please?
Mr. Ustruck.
Here.
Mr. Keller.
Here.
Mr. Schultz.
Present.
Mr. Sikich.
Present.
Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Bailey.
Present.
Ms. Klug. Here. Mrs. Justum.
Present.
And President Emmett.
Here. Proper notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Do we have any additions or modifications to tonight's agenda?
I have none.
Board members? Nope. All right. Then we will move on to item 6, public comments. All right, and then we move on to item 7, the superintendent's report. Dr. Luxman.
Great, thank you. In 7.1, there is nothing to report in the legislative update. Nothing has changed since our last meeting with regards to education legislation, at least. So we'll move on to 7.2, the district recognitions. So first of all, we want to acknowledge Great Clips. Lauren Niemer, I think it's Niemer, owner of several Great Clip salons in the area, arranged for $1,000 corporate donation to go to Horace Mann Elementary School for school supplies. Mrs. Niemer is a resident of West Dallas. We're very thankful to our friends at Great Clips for the generous donation. GE Healthcare, on Wednesday, August 21st, 2019, Irving Elementary School and James E. Dotke High School participated in the 25th annual GE Healthcare Community Service Day. And again, it was first time that schools in our district were part of a service day event with GE. What we want to do right now is really acknowledge members of our facilities department. For this project, we're under the direction of Assistant Manager Dan Bartz. Dan worked really hard to prepare for the event. The major project, a new tot lot at Irving, involved carpenter Brian Botch. Working with vendors Berkey and Lee Recreation, he designed and scaled drawings for the new play equipment. For 3 weeks, Brian, Kevin Grissis, and Henry Peters, Justin Fry, Tony Shuttle, and Jay Zielinski worked to prepare the site for the installation. The day was nothing short of amazing. We're planning a very special thank you to GE Healthcare for their support, and that'll be at a future board meeting. The woman that coordinated the entire day for GE stopped me at Irving and just was so appreciative of our facility folks and the way they engaged, which was, I think, different than they've experienced in the past when they've worked with different schools. So it was really good to hear. Youth Theater, a shout out to Aladdin Jr. We received a letter from Jim Romani, a resident of Woodstock, Illinois. He praised the cast and crew of this outstanding show, specifically Jordan Pollard, the director, Zachary Beeksma, the music director and sound designer, Kristen Pagenkopf, the choreographer, and Lisa Grand and Colleen Leahy for costumes. And I attended the show on Saturday night, and it was a really fun show to see. It was well worth it. Had a little 7-year-old grandson in tow, and he made it through most of the second act. But very proud of the next morning. He had to wear his West Dallas Youth Theater Aladdin Jr. to breakfast, pointing it out to everybody. I have Aladdin Jr. shirt, so it definitely made an impact on him. At Lane Intermediate School, Saija Freiberg, grade 7, recently attended Space Academy at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center at NASA. The week-long educational program promotes science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM, while training students with hands-on activities and missions based on teamwork, leadership, and problem solving. So I just spent the week training with a team that flew a simulated space mission to the International Space Station, ISS, the Moon, or Mars. The crew participated in experiments and successfully completed an extravehicular activity, EVA, or spacewalk. Saija and crew returned to Earth in time to graduate with honors. And at Shared Journeys, all staff at Shared Journeys have completed their required child care certifications. Lisa Cola just completed skills and strategies for the child care teacher and is now certified through work and family consulting. Shared Journeys was recognized at the Big Latch On event on August 2nd, 2019, held at the Farmers Market for becoming a breastfeeding friendly site. The senior class of 2019 completed the coffee kiosk renovation with the support of Kohl's Corporate, who assisted with painting, and Galbraith Carnahan Architects. Architect Joe Galbraith is a former student of our district. And the emergency exit door construction for the infant lab was completed thanks to the Knights of Columbus. We have a lot of people to thank for their support at Shared Journeys. And then a couple just quick updates. There were no public comments at the August 12th meeting, so there's nothing to follow up there. So we completed New Teacher Week. So that was really all of last week, and that was a great success, and really a lot of credit to Deidre and her team in planning for that. Deidre received a number of really appreciative emails of thanks. I met the new teachers for the first time out at Homestead, where we have teachers from all of the Closing the Achievement Gap Consortium school districts together for an afternoon workshop on equity. And that was well received, and I think minds were definitely full when they were engaging, and then they had an opportunity to meet in school teams. Deidre made sure there was a leader from each of the schools that then came out, and they had some conversation about, okay, so what does that work look like where we are right now at Lane, or where we are at Central? So they could get a little grounding, and from the big theory and the big ideas to, okay, what does it look like now for where we are? And then we're all set to officially kick off the new school year. That's tomorrow. So we welcome all staff back, and all the teachers are back in the auditorium at Hale. We start, as we have for a number of years now, with really some wellness activities to help people kind of focus and center. So we do a walk on the track, so we invite people to come out and walk a mile or two with me. So I'll be out there at 7 a.m.
Weather permitting.
Weather permitting. But it looks promising. I've been checking it all day, so I think we'll be fine. There's also a yoga class, and then tomorrow for the first time we're offering an African drum circle experience. And so we're using a little bit of we're using the instructors that participated with us in summer school at Man, introducing African drumming and literacy using healthy and mindful words, and some African dance that went very well. And so they're going to do a drumming experience with staff, and then, I shouldn't say this on TV, but the surprise is that then the staff that participate are going to end up on stage during the opening presentation. They don't know that, but they do now if they're watching. So, and that completes the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to item 8, the president's report, taking a look at the board calendar. Today is August 26th, and we have a regular Board of Education meeting. Immediately following, we have a workshop on the 1920 proposed budget, and immediately following that, we will have a closed session meeting. On September 9th, beginning at 6 p.m., we have a regular Board of Education meeting. Immediately following that, we will have a workshop on our facility updates. On September 16th, beginning at 6 p.m., we have our televised public budget hearing. On Monday, September 23rd, beginning at 6 p.m., we have a regular Board of Education meeting. Do any board members have any community events to update? Jeff?
Just want to give a shout out to Fox 6 News. They did a great segment on the GE project at Irving during their Real Milwaukee showing. It was really nice.
Anybody else? All right, and just a little shout out too, with school starting, most of the schools are gonna have their dine-out nights if they haven't already started. They're already starting, so pay attention for those emails and those things pop up on social media. And if you're gonna go out to eat, then please support one of the schools when you do it. I know we've got about 15 of them already scheduled for our school, so I'm sure there'll be a lot more of those out there, so be watching for those. Okay. We will then move on to the consent agenda. Item 9.1, the approval of minutes from the August 12th, 2019 regular Board of Education meeting and the August 19th, 2019 workshop. Item 9.2, the employment summary. Item 9.3, the supplementary contracts. And item 9.4, the financial summary. Does anyone need anything separated?
Can you
Heather?
separate out the supplementals?
We can? Anything else to be separated? If not, we would look for a motion on item 9.1, 9.2, and 9.4.
So moved.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded on items 9.1, 9.2, and 9.4. Any additional comments or questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and then we have item 9.3.
Move for approval. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? Will you have an abstention? Okay. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes.
So if I could take one moment here. So in the employment summary, you just approved the hiring of Brian Summerfield, who's here with us as new assistant principal at Central High School. So if you want to join us, and it's an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to the board and just a little bit of background and why you're excited to be a part of West Allis.
Good evening. First, I want to thank Dr. Marty Lexman, the entire board, for this opportunity. I want to thank Principal Taylor. I've been there for 2 days now, and learning the building, learning the faces has been the greatest challenge so far, but very excited. And a lot of people have asked me, why West Allis Central? Why go there? Why choose that building? And the thing that always comes to mind is my interview. In the second round interview, it was early August, and in a small room in the back of the building, you had 12 people in the interview team in the middle of summer, including teachers, deans, athletic directors, and I've been part of many interview teams on both sides. And I've never seen in the middle of summer that many people for a high school interview like that. So that was really cool to see, and that always kind of struck with me that if you can get that much passion in August, imagine the passion and engagement you can get during the school year. The entire building's been extremely welcoming. Like I said, a lot to learn, huge shoes to fill in Deanne Yaklich. She is your guys' gain, our loss. She's been outstanding, and having her there for that transition for a month is going to be outstanding. For myself, I'm a UWM graduate in both undergrad and master's, and then I spent the majority of my education career at Kenosha Bradford, starting as a social studies teacher, later as psychology, and then past couple years as a dean of students. That dean role has been huge. We collaborate with administration, we collaborated with other deans, we focused big on trauma-sensitive education, and that's something I'd love to build and continue to bring to West Allis Central, is some of that trauma focus, that mental health focus, finding out we have kids from all shapes and sizes coming in, how can we support them, what in their background can help influence and help lead them to be successful. I always told my kids at Bradford, this is not the end game. This is not the final result. This cannot be the highlight. This is a highlight, but what are we doing after? And that's the kind of attitude I hope to bring to West Allis Central. So I'm very excited to start. Like I said, first 2 days have been hectic, and I'm sure the first couple years will be. but I'm very honored and excited to be part of this team.
Great, welcome.
Welcome
We're real
aboard.
excited to have you.
Welcome.
Congratulations. All right. Well, with that, then we will move seamlessly into our business services workshop this evening. Caitlin, come on up.
Take one closer. There's enough for already two. Yep. So welcome. This is going to be a little bit different from spring budget reviews that we've had. So I'm just going to start with talking through 18-19. So some of these numbers are going to be a little surprising to you, but surprising in a good way. Part of this surplus that we'll talk through from 18-19's budget is simply due to changing of business managers and things in 18-19 not always being budgeted in the place that we're spending. Therefore, I had to be conservative in our budget, and then we also had surprises along the way that swung in our favor and ended us with a surplus in 18-19 of larger than expected. So we're going to talk through kind of how that breaks down and then what our options are for that surplus for 18-19 and then what that means for our 19-20 budget. So we have a couple places that we can have a surplus, and we have two budgets. So we have an expense budget, which is where all the school budgets are, departments, where everybody sees their numbers. We also have a revenue budget, so it's where we budget how much we're going to get for property taxes, equalization aid, student fees, etc. So in our Fund 10 expense budget, we actually spent less than budgeted by $7.4 million. On the revenue side, and this includes the building sale, we received $8.5 million more than we had budgeted. So if you take the building sale out of that, we still received almost $2 million more than we budgeted. When I looked into why that was, we had about almost near $1 million of interest that we gained from having that $24 million in the bank that we have to pay back this in 19-20. We gained almost $1 million of interest in there and didn't budget $1 million. So that was a big chunk of that $2 million. So when we add those two together, we have a total surplus of about 16 million in 18-19. And keep in mind, this is still unaudited, so our audit's complete, it'll be complete in the next couple weeks, but we don't expect any material things to come up that would really swing this number. When you take out of that 16 million the building sale, which was about 6.67 million, our total projected surplus without the building sale is 9.36, and then we already budgeted 500,000 from 18-19's budget to add to fund balance. So if we take that out, our additional amount that we have in surplus is about $8.8 million. So there's still listed on the bottom a few things that could change this surplus. So we are still finalizing our grant claims for 18-19, so that could swing things in either direction, but not expected to be a large amount. We've completed most of our grant claims for 18-19 to this point, and should be finishing the rest of them this week. We could still have adjustments per the auditors to make in our books, and there could be potential outstanding 18-19 invoices, although at this point in the year, again, we don't expect any material things to hit our books. So we're going to talk through what that 8.86 million means, what we can do with it, and that's on page 2 of your packet. So that building sale, I'm just recapping some of those highlights. So the building sale was 6.6 million. The additional surplus is about 8.86 million. The fund balance at 13.5 million will be the end of our 18-19 year with that projected 500,000 addition without any additional going into it. So what we've already budgeted will end 18-19 at about 13.5 million in fund balance, and our mill rate is at 9.54. And when we talk about fund balance, our goal, if our goal is 20%, that's about $20 million. So ending 18-19 with about 13.5 million in fund balance, and we can talk about what we want to do with this additional surplus. So I've listed a few options here for us to go over. So the first one is if we put everything, all that entire surplus into fund balance. So the building sale and the budget surplus into fund balance, our mill rate drops to $8.96, and our fund balance would increase to 29.5 million. So that drop in a mill rate is about 58 cents, and the goal with a mill rate is to keep it steady. So people notice when it goes down, they notice when it goes up, but they don't complain when it goes down, but they'll notice when it goes back up again in the future. So our goal is to keep it as steady as possible. So that first option, with everything going into fund balance, increases our fund balance to beyond our 20%, so 29 million, and a mill rate of 8.96. The second option, with a building sale going into Fund 49 and the budget surplus into fund balance, puts our mill rate at about $8.52 for next year, so a drop of $1, over $1, and our fund balance at 22 million. And when we first sold the building, we talked about our options with that building sale revenue. We had originally said we're going to put $2 million towards Fund 49, and the rest we'll put in fund balance. Now with this additional budget surplus, we have an option to put the whole entire thing in Fund 49. And I'm going to skip ahead to that definition I have down at the bottom and why that might be beneficial for us. So Fund 49 is a capital improvement fund. The dollars in this fund roll over from year to year, and a district cannot transfer funds into Fund 49 from Fund 10. So we have this special unique opportunity outside of levying to put money in Fund 49. And that 6.67 million could go entirely, we could leave it in there until we want to renovate a building or build a building for the admin site. So we know we have this building for 5 years. We could keep it in there until we're ready to renovate or do something, make an admin space. And therefore, if we ever had to down the road, to go to a referendum or something, we wouldn't have to go for the adults. The adults are taken care of. We were fiscally responsible with our building sale. We saved that in Fund 49, and therefore any potential future referendums, I know that we haven't even talked about it yet, so way down the road, that could be solely for schools, for student learning. So if we look at option number 2 again, so that was the building sale, the entire thing in Fund 49, so a little bit different of what we talked about in the spring when we sold the building, but we have that additional surplus, which gives us that opportunity. And then the third option is in between those in terms of the mill rate. So if we put our building sale in Fund 49 and we did a transfer of $4 million from Fund 10 to Fund 38, so essentially that money can sit in Fund 38 fund balance, and then we put that remaining amount into Fund 10's fund balance, so be about 4.8 million. Our mill rate would be $9.13 projected, which would still be a drop, but less significant than either of the other two. And then our fund balance would be up to 18.3 million. And then I listed other because there could be other possibilities, but those are the three that I outlined. So when we met as a finance committee on Wednesday, our committee leaned towards option number 3 because of that mill rate, to keep it as steady as possible and not have it drop so significantly. Anything else from finance committee that you want to mention?
So, this was obviously a big change that we were very happy to see. But it comes, as they say, with great power comes great responsibility. And so there's a lot of options that we had to think over. From our perspective, because of the unlikelihood that we're going to happenstance upon almost $10 million at the end of the year that we're not used to seeing, we want to try to keep that levy as level as we can. As Marty always says, it's best just to have a flat line going straight across. So this is still reducing the levy, still providing flexibility to the district as far as being able to have some funds set aside for future projects that we know are coming. And at the same time, being responsible with the building sale. And Fund 49, as Caitlin mentioned, is not something we can use any other time. And we're not planning on selling any of our buildings anytime soon, so this is something that I think we thought was useful for us in kind of a balanced use of those funds to be able to still be able to fund our district moving forward.
So planning for today and planning for tomorrow.
That'd be the hope.
Okay.
But always open for other suggestions. If there was another option, any other board members, a different split or something like that. But we felt that as far as how this is divided up, did a good balance of the three kind of options, past, present, and future, if you will. So do you need a thumbs up, thumbs down? Do you want some?
It would be nice to have some sort of thoughts from the board on what we're looking for 18-19, and we can start putting those in the book so our auditors can make sure that they're good to go.
I have a question.
Yep.
We had talked numerous times about trying to get to 20 million for the fund balance. So I guess I don't see like a hybrid of number 3 here, where maybe we do 6.44 million toward fund balance to get that to the 20, and then that remaining, I believe it's 2.36 million to fund 38. Is that something that was considered too, so that we hit that fund balance target?
So we could do that. It would drop the mill rate, though.
It would drop, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for, some of that explanation.
Yeah, and part of the next conversation is really about this year's budget, because there's also some carryover surplus. I don't know if that's the right way to describe this, but the surplus kind of carries forward now that we see it. So I think we'll have the opportunity to hit that $20 million in the current budget. And I think the exciting thing is that, outside of the OPEB settlement that we put into fund balance, the rest of this has really been managing the resources really well, but it's come at some price, right? Because that means those are dollars that we've had to rebuild that could have been going into classrooms, but after next year, the dollars can go back to classrooms. So it's kind of an exciting moment for us. I think option 3 to me does make the most sense. Can you talk a little bit about, again, just what is Fund 38 and
Yeah.
how does that get used?
Okay, so Fund 38 is our debt payments. So we have debt payments from years 2010 and on that we've taken debt out for. And so each year we have, going forward, I think our debt payments drop to about 3-ish million. This year, I want to say in 18-19 it was about 5 million. So we have those debt payments going forward about $3 million a year. If we transfer money into Fund 38, we can still, and we'll talk about next year's budget on the next page, but we can still levy for Fund 38. So our full levy is this much. Our Fund 38, we have to first take off our debt payment. So we're gonna levy this much for Fund 38, and then the remaining is Fund 10. So if we ever transfer that money to Fund 38 and then decide that we don't have to levy the full amount for Fund 38, we can levy less. That amount that we were gonna levy this much for is now this much. That means we have that much more for Fund 10. So if we did transfer it, we could still, in 1920's budget, we could still levy, and that money's sitting in there. We could think strategically long-term. So when we have a budget adoption that's gonna cost $500,000 in 1 year, that could be the year that we don't levy those funds in Fund 38 and instead use what's sitting in the Fund 38 fund balance and put those additional $500,000 from Fund 10 towards our budget adoption, or curriculum adoption.
And then we do have a major one coming up in the next 2 years, correct? Don't we have ELA coming up soon?
Yep.
Yep.
Which is about $1 million.
So, again, forward thinking potentially.
Oh, Heather?
Does, all of these will help increase our Moody rating because we're putting money away. But is there any one that would better benefit us that way? If we're putting more
Moody's
into our?
They won't tell us, like,
Okay.
so when I asked them about if we put X amount in fund balance versus Y amount in fund balance, what's better? And they, they said, well, your fund balance is, so the smaller it is, the more, when you put money in, it's growing at a larger rate, at a faster rate. So if your fund balance is 50 million and you put in 1 million, it's gonna be a smaller increase.
Yeah.
So any addition right now, I think would help I don't know that one would help our bond rating over another. No, did you?
What is our total budget right now?
I should know that number, but I'm so in the weeds. I wanna say our expenses this year were about 102 million and our revenue was about 117.
Does that
Okay.
include recreation?
No, that's just Fund 10.
That's just Fund 10?
Yep.
Okay. Right.
Do we need to look at this do we need to look at the 18-19 surplus as it relates to 19-20 before we can
Yeah,
have
we
better
can-
clarity on
yeah.
18-19?
So it's good idea. Let's talk about 18-19 or 19-20 and then we can go back to 18-19. So why does this affect the 19-20 budget? So I just want to be clear that these are separate dollars. So our 18-19 budget, we had this surplus. Our 19-20 budget was based on as if 18-19 was a balanced budget. So we rolled that over, and then what we did was we made adjustments. So we essentially made cuts. We did a reduction in force. We reduced building budgets by 25%, and in order to get to balance, because we thought that 18-19 was a balanced budget. Well, it turns out we have this surplus of nearly $9 million in 18-19, which translates, it's another surplus in 19-20. So that's $9 million we can put back into 19-20's budget. It's totally separate money.
This is money on paper at this point still, right?
Yep.
So,
Right, yeah, some of the things that are still unknown, right, is third Friday count. That's the big one. So where do we come in with the numbers of kids? And that could change this, but it's not gonna be a $9 million swing if we come in under, that's for sure. So there are some dollars that we need some guidance on kind of how to build the budget with these dollars included now.
So what we did was we took the board's priorities that we went through in the spring and then also looked at what was reduced in the spring as well when we had thought our position wasn't as great as it is now. So here are the options that the administration team went through as well as the finance committee. So anybody can, finance committee, feel free to step into any comments that you have. So the first one on this list is return building and department budgets to the full allocation. So that's 475,000. The next one is a facility study. So right now we know we're doing new work in old places, as Marty says. We know that our enrollment has been declining, and so this study will tell us what we need to do in each of our current buildings to make them adequate and conducive to today's learning. So essentially the goal of this study is, which would be similar to the study that Kraus Anderson did of Central, which, side note, is being presented at the September 9th board meeting, so you'll hear that study that day. But this will help us determine the number of buildings we need for the number of students with the work that we're doing. So not just a new boiler needs to go in, a new window needs to go in, and new roof needs to go in. More comprehensive than that.
Right, and how we arrived, I arrived at 200,000 because that's what I asked to put in. But just benchmarking off the work that Shorewood did, they spent about $40,000 and they have 4 campuses. Right? And the high school campus has 5 buildings on it. So with our number of, and we have about 25 buildings, on 18 campuses. So that gives us some, like, okay, it's about 4 times as much, so we or 5 times as much, so we landed at 200,000.
And this is the work that will guide our facility advisory committee going forward. the next item we have in there is returning the transfer to Fund 46 for the turf field scheduled maintenance. So every year in this scheduled maintenance plan, we have $325,000 we're supposed to put in Fund 46. And that's after X amount of years, the field is going to cost $1.1 million to replace or repair whatever that per that schedule that already exists. So we had taken out the transfer to Fund 46. And when we were going to put it back in at 325, which is 1 year's worth, in talking with curriculum and not being able to do a budget adoption in 1920, but potentially being able to do or doing one in 2021, that could be another opportunity for us to not transfer money in from Fund 46. We've kind of already done it for the 2021 year if we do this option, and use that $325,000 towards a curriculum adoption.
Okay, makes sense.
The next one on here is returning the fund balance restoration allocation. So kind of to Brian's point about not being at 20 million. So if we went with option 3 on for the 18-19 surplus, about 18.3 million in fund balance, and then this would get us closer, almost to not 20 million, just quite,
Yeah,
but
close.
19. And then this next one on here is salary and benefits, a supplemental increase. So there are some options that we could do with this chunk of money. One of them could be, and we're looking for board feedback, so feel free to offer your suggestions as well. But one of them could be we could take the percent that each employee group, so teachers, EAs, cleaners, maintenance, et cetera, has of the full salary and benefits budget and kind of allocate that percent to that group and then divide evenly among those staff members. Another option we could do is employ a compensation committee. So we know our salaries are lowest in the region, and our goal is to get to that average. So this could be, if we were able to get this out by the end of the fiscal year, we could employ this committee, this compensation team, and this could be the first year in creating that sustainable compensation structure to get us to average. The struggle with that is making sure too it's sustainable for the future. So we do have this one-time chunk of money right now, but we have to make sure that this plan, which is going to be, intense, like comprehensive, a lot of work throughout the fiscal year to make sure that it's sustainable for the future.
Has there been any discussions with the groups this would affect as far as what they would like to see?
We haven't yet.
Not at this point, right, because we need some guidance from the board, if the board supports even having those dollars available for compensation before we kind of talk about the opportunity, right? I don't want to create false hope, but.
So right now, you just want to know from us if we would be in favor of allocating 2.15 million towards that.
It's that, and would you prefer that, the first version that Caitlin talked about is simply kind of a rough calculation. It says then we distribute it and we figure out how far can we get people towards the average, and it's a mathematical solution and we just distribute the money. Or we engage employees in the various employee groups and we say, here's what's allocated in each employee group. Now let's develop a compensation system that distributes that by the end of this fiscal year, but also is a plan going forward. And so that's really, so do you support this, and kind of which path, kind of the more immediate kind of calculation and distribution, or an engagement process with employees with the goal that we distribute this at some point before the end of this fiscal year?
So, I mean, I think we've been working for a long time towards this compensation model, figuring out what that compensation model is going to be moving forward. And I think in this opportunity, my personal opinion would be with option 2 in that regard, so that if we can engage the staff now with the knowledge that this is something that we're looking for, and then we can have, hopefully by the end of the fiscal year when this is being distributed, a good idea combined with the work that the administration is already doing about what the staff would like to see and what we can reasonably afford long-term. That's my opinion.
I agree. I think we're getting into a situation, as you even indicated, we're at the lower end of some of those salary structures. And if we don't do something now when we have an opportunity, it's going to put us further behind the 8 ball. So I would agree that we need to do something now to try to get us ahead of that as much as possible.
So option 2 for you as well?
Option 2 for me.
Other people's
Christine?
opinion?
Yes.
I think, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but the more more involvement and more engagement we'll have, and I think that's kind of what we're shooting for as a district as well. To give them give the employees a little bit of ownership in the process, and I think that's a good thing.
Yep.
Gary?
When looking at that, how far out would you be planning in that process? 2-year, 5-year? Because we'll have this 10 million here, but if we do things right, I don't think we're gonna have 10 million every year.
Right.
So at some point, you try to get to 0, but how do you work that into that?
Right, we've got to be able to build it
Future budget.
into future budgets. So I think, reasonable is to project out 5 years. In education funding, right, even that's a bit of a stretch because we really are, relying on 2-year cycles. But I think for us to plan with 5 years in mind, what I like about option 2 is that it's going to be a conversation where there's real money, like available now. It's not an exercise just for the sake of trying to figure out a model. It's actually, we have something to implement and we just need your help to figure it out. One of the questions we ask on the employee engagement survey is my principal or supervisor consults me on decisions that impact my work, right? So this is a real opportunity for us to do that.
Right.
We're getting a lot of nods.
So I'm hearing.
Involvement, engagement, long-term planning to get to average and above.
Right, and I'm hearing support for that,
Yeah.
using those dollars in the budget for additional compensation.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Okay, we have a lot of work to do.
Yes.
It's nothing new.
That's
Good
true.
point.
Right.
Great.
Get caffeine IVs going.
Okay, so the next one on here is CIP projects via Fund 49 levy. So we talked, this is additional separate money from the surplus and the building sale, which we talked about, building sale could go into Fund 49, and we talked about that potentially being the dollars that we use to create a home for administration once we are no longer renting here. This is separate. So this would be, we would actually be levying for it. And again, Fund 49 does roll over. So if we took this opportunity to budget 5 million, levy 5 million in Fund 49 for capital improvement projects, doesn't mean we have to have the CIP budget be 5 million. So we could utilize that as, projecting into the future. If we did, we know the 1.2 million is what CIP needs to maintain their schedules. So we could bring that back up to 1.2 at the proposed, or when the preliminary budget was approved, we were at a $1 million CIP budget, so we could bring that back up to 1.2. We could make it 2, we could make it 3, whatever the board would decide. But this would be an opportunity to put the 5 million in there and potentially use it for not just 1920, but 2021 if we wanted to do that as well.
So just, I don't remember if you said this, but there's two ways to get money in Fund 49. One is the building sale, the other is to actually use some of our levy to put money into Fund 49. So that's what this part of that would be doing that. So we're using $5 million of our levy and just putting into that fund. And what the finance committee how we wanted to do that was what's the budget gonna be? How are we gonna determine the budget? We wanted to have a report from the facilities department so we could see what they've done, what they foresee needing to be done in the next couple of years, and then what that dollar amount looks like, and then based on that, we can kind of decide what we want to do. Because I'm sure if we gave them $5 million, they'd be able to spend $5 million. And so we can just kind of look at that and say, okay, what are we looking at? Do we want to divide it down the middle and say, 2.5 this year, 2.5 next year, and then we don't have to worry about CIP for next year's budget? But that's why we wanted to kind of hear, because we haven't had a report from the facilities department for a couple of years. So I'd like to see that myself. And I think that will help inform the board's decision about what that budget dollar amount should be.
Yep, and they're gonna be doing that September 9th.
And I would imagine hypothetically that the facility study would play a part in that too. I mean, depending on what kind of results or recommendations come from a facility study, that may impact where we want to do CIP projects elsewhere
Yep.
moving forward, correct?
Yep.
The other, sorry, from the mic. The other part of this is that, so if that $5 million gets expensed over 2 or 3 years, and we hit a challenge, maintaining the additional compensation that allows us some flex to smooth it out, right? So then we don't need to levy, for CIP for a year, or 2 or 3. It opens up some room to maintain the, salary, contributions that we committed to as we kind of figure out how we keep moving forward.
Okay, I need clarification now, because I thought we talked in committee, and Caitlin said earlier that the facility study was not related to CIP. Facility study was, we're gonna look at the number of facilities, student, student enrollment predictions, boundaries. It had nothing to do with CIP and building improvement. This is more of a study of how many facilities do we need. Once those kind of determinations are made, then what kind of improvements we make to schools or close schools and such. So I just wanna make sure I'm clear on that.
I think what Brian meant is like based on that, if we determine that we might wanna spend dollars in one building over another, based on the results of that facility study. So not,
Okay,
not.
well, what's the time frame we're talking about for this facility study?
Within the next 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think it should be a surprise that a facility study may inform capital improvement projects, right? So it's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal, at least for me, is that how do we make our facilities best support on learning, right? So learning from now, the kind of learning we're trying to do now, that goes back to that line of, we're trying to do kind of new learning in old places. So how do we shape, reshape, or replace buildings to best support learning? And that's ultimately what we want to accomplish through the facility study. But they're going to identify things that maybe aren't on our capital improvement list that, are essential we address, or it may be that this is not a building you should be investing in anymore. So let's put that money in a building we know you're going to have for another 50 years.
And the last one on this list is curriculum. So talking with Deidre, there are some items that she can excitedly do in 1920. So, and we talked about projecting out when those curriculum adoptions would be, and we originally had curriculum at $1 million, and then I was like, cool, that doesn't make sense. We're not just going to spend. 300,000 is what we can actually use in a productive way for our students in 1920, and then we did some things with the Fund 46 transfer and such where we could free up dollars in 2021 when we start having those curriculum adoptions, those big ones.
It sounds very thoughtful.
Yeah.
And collaborative and projecting out for the future, which is nice to hear that we're not just thinking about how to spend this year and how to get through this, but it sounds like we're really planning for it down the road. So what this also means is that, as we've had the conversation earlier about, where the 18-19 budget kind of, changed course was having different business managers and business. This means that you're here for multiple years so that you can see this through.
Correct.
So that we don't have these challenges.
Yes.
Right, so that we can make sure that all of this hits and goes without the confusion. Okay,
Nice
make
move.
sure we're all clear.
Nice
Yeah. So make sure that we're all clear on that,
Great segue.
so, okay.
It's the 10-year plan, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
make sure
it's
that we're
10
all in agreement with that, a lot of nodding and things, so, okay, make sure we're good with that, so. Yeah, because this is good work, we want to see this continue and see the fruits of the labor for all.
And
of us,
honestly,
so.
it's way more fun to project and plan for the future instead of just this year. Like in talking with, each department about how we can best utilize them. What do we have going on in years from now, rather than just right now all the time. So that's what I enjoy too.
These are much better conversations than.
Yeah.
Well, that's right.
Right, it's been-
Where
And
we've been.
it's so much faster too to just put $10 million more, in your budget than take it out. So.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing, I believe, support in general for the administration's recommendations and for the current year budget, for this year's budget, 1920. I mean, again, we don't finalize until after Third Friday, and it's the last meeting in October where you approve the final budget. So things may swing a bit and some adjustment, but I'm gonna take a little bit of liberty tomorrow, unless you give me feedback that you're not ready for that, but to be able to share with staff that, we're looking at a much better and projected outlook right now, given just how careful we've been in the last few years. And so the board is likely, I can't overpromise because the board hasn't approved the final budget, but is likely to support returning the building and department budgets to their full amount. Principals will love hearing that, and that the board is, in the final budget, has given the nod and is likely to support an additional $2 million going into overall compensation, and we're gonna engage all of you to figure out what that looks like. Because as a superintendent, that's really fun to announce when, you know.
Especially when
how we started.
Way to get them excited.
Right.
Start the year.
Well, we've
Right.
been trying to work towards a longer-term compensation feasibility anyway,
Yes.
both with,
Yes.
you know, current and future and past and everything else and what that looks like in benefits and the whole overall package, and this is a step in the right direction,
Yes.
so.
And we did discuss briefly about that future, like the HRA and funding it and having to do that and getting our, and using fund balance to do that, because using fund balance in a one-time known amount to be able to do that, so if we get ourselves in a nice situation, we were at our 20% or very close to it, if we even have to dip into it for that, to get ourselves, because it's gonna hurt for a couple years before it helps. So, doing budgets like this is going to get us in that situation, so we can do that. It'd be a, 2 to 3 year hiccup, and then we'll be right back to where we need to be.
Good, no, thank you, yeah, that's good to point that out.
Any other comments or questions or feedback for Caitlin?
Do we need to do the 18,
Yeah, we
19
did
thing
that,
too?
yeah.
Because we did the 19,
Yep.
20.
So now that we've gone through, what Fund 49 looks like and all of that for 1920, going back to our options for surplus. So I'm just gonna review the three quick. So we have the building sale and the budget surplus, so all of it in Fund 10's fund balance brings our fund balance up to 29 million, but our mill rate down to 8.96. So drop of 58 approximate cents from this year. Building sale, option number 2 is building sale in Fund 49, because again, we have the two options that we can levy or we can sell property and put it in there. So that's that unique opportunity we have to put the whole thing in Fund 49, and with the idea of saving it in there until we are ready to do something about an admin space. And then the budget surplus and fund balance, so the mill rate with that option drops to about 8.52, with a fund balance of about 22 million. And then the third option was the building sale in Fund 49, a $4 million transfer to Fund 38 for debt payments, although in the 1920 budget, we still have a full levy for the full amount for Fund 38's debt payments. So use for the future essentially is what this 4 million is. And then the 4.8 million addition to fund balance. And that is the middle option in terms of mill rate. So mill rate is about $9.13 and a fund balance of 18.3 million.
So I would be in favor of option 3.
Okay.
Me too.
I would be as well.
Same here.
I just want to see
Yes.
the mill rate there.
All right.
Okay.
I think we have some direction from you and some guidance, so thank you. That helps us go forward.
Great, okay. We will go ahead and take a quick 5-minute break, then we'll break down cameras and get ready for our executive session, so we are at recess.